The Nova 2 Lite by GameSir has been a staple and a golden standard for pretty much as long as it's been released in the budget-conscious market of controllers. And since then, a lot of other options have been made available on the market, but GameSir said hold my drink and came out with what we'll see today if it is the new golden standard, the Nova 2 Lite, which so happens to be funny because they do have a golden edition, which unfortunately I do not have, and is in collaboration with a Chinese pro player. It looks gorgeous. Well, we'll have to make do with one of their two regular color options that they have for the Nova 2 Lite. We'll put it through a lot of tests and see if it's still a champion amongst the low-priced controller options on the market. Let's unbox it. So we have a 3-mode connection. That would be Bluetooth, wired, and dongle. Hall effect sticks, Hall effect triggers with hair trigger option. We can change the value of your buttons in software, not hardware. See anything else? We can see the dongle here. Mechanical D-pad, asymmetric motors, should be a rotary style kind of rumble. 2 extra buttons in the back, and a textured grip. Despite everything that happened in the economy since, they have managed to strike the same price point as the Nova Lite when it launched of $29.99. And while there are options on the market, a few options that are a little lower in price, I'd say 30 USD is pretty much still a very entry-level price point to have. USB-C to USB-A cable, branded, not braided, but fairly long. Not as malleable as many cables, but considering the price point, it's understandable that they would sacrifice certain things that maybe people have come to expect when buying a GameSir controller. Well, that cable is still fine. It'll still do the job. Thank you brochure. Oh, this one doesn't have a sticker. Look at that. Well, has a pretty big manual, but having been using GameSir controllers for quite some time, I usually know the way to navigate them by heart. And much like the original Nova Lite, we have a case that comes with this controller. And by the way, if you happen to own a Supernova, the Supernova will also fit in that case. We have our dongle here. Okay, membrane button, feel quite, oh boy. Very, very extremely short travel, dome style button, so tactile. Yeah. I don't know how that's gonna feel. Hall effect sticks. Feels nice. We'll check the tension. We have tactile bumpers. Hall effect triggers, slightly dampened at the end. 2 tactile back buttons. And these are trigger stops with, I want to say they pretty much have the range. They're not necessarily the shortest, but it's nice to have them nonetheless. We have pogo pins for a charging dock. Well, look at that. It also works with the dock from the Supernova. And there's RGB around the GameSir logo, which actually matches the battery status. That would probably represent the battery status. That's very often what GameSir controllers do when docked. So this one is probably halfway. I have very little data on this controller, so we'll discover it at the same time. And we'll put it through in the string of tests, starting with software. And so one of the nice things with the Nova 2 Lite is that it'll be compatible with the GameSir Connect app, the same app used for the Cyclone, the Tarantula Pro, the Supernova, and then of course now the Nova 2 Lite. And once you're in there, you can address RGB. So if we add some saturation, you'll see that we're able to edit the color around the ring of the GameSir logo. When looking at vibration, you can address your strength. And we have a nice rotary action motor, and they're asymmetrical, right? So the rumble that you have from the left side is not exactly the same rumble that you have from the right side, which has been the case for many years. And the first party controllers, we have the same here. And you can tell by the image as well that you have more discs to create the rumble effect as you do on the right side. For the triggers, we can address the dead zone. So for the sake of the testing that we're about to do, I'm gonna crank it all the way up and down on each end. We have a software hair trigger, so if you don't necessarily want to shorten it, but you want a hair trigger, you can go adaptive mode. And adaptive mode, what it does is, the moment I push deep enough, you'll notice that it activates the hair trigger, but the moment I let it go just a little bit, it is considered to have been released. So you could just, from the very deepness portion of your trigger, you could trigger it by just barely moving it. That's what the adaptive does. If you just put off, then you have no adaptive trigger, but of course you have the trigger stops, which we'll adjust it to be a hair trigger as well. Takes a second, as you saw, but it works. For your sticks, we got dead zone that we can address, and keep in mind this is a Hall effect. I'm gonna leave the left stick to no dead zone, so we'll test later. I have put 0 dead zone on my left stick, so we'll be able to test it. Now you can also address the curve if you want, so we have a bunch of different options, and you also can make your custom one, which is pretty impressive again considering the price point. We usually don't see these features in like the budget most controllers, but we have it here. And we can also do raw, which I personally prefer. So for my right stick, I'm gonna put raw, and left stick I'm gonna keep circle, but still put the natural curve. And for buttons, we can address each of the buttons. Now we don't have anything like mapping keyboard or mouse keys, but as far as like customizing pretty much everything we want, we can also do that. And even though you don't see it in the software, I'm gonna show you by holding M and for example holding A, you'll notice that it just shined here. That means that I just activated the turbo. So if I hold the button, you see that turbo is activated, and if I do it again, I remove turbo. And at the same time, we do have back paddles. So if I click here, you'll see that I can put any button. But if you hold M and hit the back button, and you do A, right? Hit the back button again. So you'll see now that I just mapped the back button, which of course I could have done with the software. But if I hold it, push it, and do A, B, A, push it again. Now what I have is a macro activated, and I'll show you in a second. And at the same time, if I do M and back paddle, and I'm gonna do the stick to create movement, if I push the back paddle, you'll notice that it reproduces the sticks as well. And we don't have a whole lot of buttons that we can record, but we can record. You can also do double buttons. Again, I'll show you in a second. Top right, you have your firmware upgrade, reset to default. So it's pretty impressive that we have all these options, all these settings by using the software that is bundled with the device. Let's move to an audio test. Okay, while we are here, you can see that if I push my back paddle, we can do a short macro, and we have up to, I believe, 12 inputs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 12 inputs total that we can do with these macros. Shorter side, definitely, but it still works. And if I do the back paddle and do 2 buttons at the same time and push, you can see that we can do 2 buttons at the same time. And so just to let you know, if you use the shortcuts on the controllers, you do have more options in terms of your back paddles and how you map them than if you rely exclusively on the software. And while we're here, you can also hold M and do your trigger for a couple of seconds if you want to activate the software hair trigger. So if I hold M and hold the trigger, you'll see that it just vibrates a little bit. And now all of a sudden, even though I don't have the switch on for hair trigger, I have an hair trigger, so you can do that as well. And that is without using the hair trigger mode, but I'm just gonna take it back. There you go. But if you also wanted to do the turbo, you can just do a quick click like this, and it's gonna do turbo instead. From GameSir controllers to another, it's pretty much always the same shortcut. For example, to swap the layout, right now A is A, B is B. If I hold M and hold A for a second, it'll vibrate, and you'll notice that it changed on gamepad tester, and now A is B and B is A. So basically this is following now the Nintendo Switch layout. So this might be a little confusing, but you know, this is something that you can do. It still matches the glyphs though. If that's not exactly what you want, you can also just change it in the software itself. So you have a bunch of different options that you can do with shortcuts. And even though I didn't look at it, those shortcuts should be in the manual. All right, let's look at the different features of this controller and how they perform. Stick tremor, we do have a little bit of it, as you can see here. Axis snapping, we have none at all. We do have stick snapback. For your raw, we have not quite a square, but good overall. For your circle corrected, we have a pretty consistent across the board, but not 0.0 average error. For inner dead zone, and keep in mind, I removed every dead zone here. I mean, we pretty much don't have anything at all. Like, that's one of those where I can just sneeze on it and it would probably move a little bit. I don't believe we're seeing gap dead zone either. We definitely have outer dead zone. And so the module gives us a little more range than what can be captured. If you look at axis 0, I mean, it's actually, all things considered, it's not a whole lot, but it's there. Stick tension, we're sitting at 65 TGF, give or take. And stick resolution, we're sitting at 0.0028. Looking at our diagonal focus, it's not impossible. It's just, it's not my preferred feel. But it seems to, you know, because of that little cove here, it seems to be fairly well to focus on diagonals, though not perfect. Rolling test. That is definitely a controller that I wouldn't be able to play too long. I find it's a little too sharp on the corners. Probably with a glove though. If you use gloves, it probably wouldn't be a problem. Adjacent directions. Ooh, that's tough. Not impossible, but tough. There's a way to do it with this controller, but it's not easy. Accidental inputs. Can still happen. Center pivot. It has no pivot at all. It's just the module flexing a little bit when I push hard, but it's not a proper pivot. But as far as using it from the center, definitely easily feasible. It's one of those always under tension D-pad, so very easy to maneuver from the center. That shouldn't be much of a problem. For your trigger, oh, and by the way, because I keep pushing that paddle, M back paddle, hit it again, will cancel your back button, and I'm going to do the same with the other one. There you go. So my back buttons no longer have value. Now, for your triggers, there's definitely some dead zone, a fair amount of it too. Okay, so the dampen portion is considered as part of the trigger. I don't really like when I see that. So right now, I'm like all the way. I have to push into the dampened zone to hit that one. Usually that's something that we can probably address with the calibration. I'm not sure if there's a shortcut for calibration. I assume that there probably will. It's going to be on the manual. I'll let you check that out if you need. You might be able to reduce that with calibration. For dampening, as we mentioned, you do have some. It doesn't push too far in, but it's considered as part of the actuation, which pretty much gives it no end dead zone. And then for hair trigger, when we activate it, the software takes a second. Once it does receive it as a hair trigger, then you have a distance shortened. But all things considered, I find that you still have a fair amount of it. When it comes to hair triggers with trigger stops as opposed to trigger buttons or hair trigger buttons, I always prefer to have something than nothing at all. So yeah. So it's a bit tough to maneuver. Of course, it's a full formed controller. Kind of wish the tension was a little lower, especially considering that, you know, we have Hall effect here, not TMR, which is expected. I mean, considering the price point, like I have to keep reminding myself that this is a $29.99 USD controller, not the peak performance. But I think peak is not necessarily like what we're going for here. I mean, I managed to break the 20,000. That is far from being a good score for me, but at least I got into that range. That was also my first round. I'm gonna do a second and third, see how much I do. Okay, we've gone up. I'm feeling a little more comfortable, so I pushed it a little more. My accuracy went down a little bit, but the score was ultimately higher. Let's do a third one. Jeez, okay. You know what? The thing is, the more I use this controller, the more I see GameSir's legendary calibrating in the background, operating it. And there was definitely an adjustment phase. I'd say it's viable for shooters because it's so reliable, that module. I feel like, obviously, they haven't put the highest end module in there, but it's so reliable. It's more reliable than what I've seen in the X5S, for example. So while I don't think that, you know, they necessarily gave all the care in the world to the Nova 2 Lite, it's obvious that they made sure that their main customers, which I think is more in the competitive scene, has sticks that they can work with even if going on a budget. You just have to adjust to it. If the tension was a little lower, I probably would have achieved that score, you know, on my second run, but man, I'm just shy of 28. If I was to train with this controller, I think I'd break the 30,000, which for me I think is a minimum for like what I would recommend for FPS. I know I could get there with this controller. All right, let's move on. You know what? I didn't feel like I was gonna like those bumpers when I originally used them, but they feel quite nice now. It's not a silent controller. The Nova Lite was more silent than this one, but when it comes to like D-pad and bumpers, yeah, definitely noisy on the noisy side, but they do feel good. Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah, not at all. Oh my god, it already hurts my thumb. Like, I'm pushing so hard to make sure that... Okay, well, I think that says it all. Not the best controllers for fighters, at least not for me. With, you know, Street Fighter here, it's not really doing a great job. I don't know if it's just me today or it's the D-pad, because I'm not disliking the comfort. You know, that's definitely something I can give it. I do think it feels good. Oh, you know what? Yeah, no. Forget what I said. I'm struggling to stay precise. Jeez. Oh yeah, that was not good. No, I'm not liking this D-pad personally. I think if we would have had a four-way lock, I think that would have helped this D-pad a great deal. Unfortunately, we don't. Let's move to the next game. It's not unpleasant for run though, and I think that's because of how the membrane feels. Like, I'm also testing the face buttons when I test this game. Not unpleasant. Not unpleasant at all. And this game kind of has like a four-way integrated with it, if you can think of it this way. And with this game, like, I'm not feeling the struggles that I was with the D-pad. I'm just struggling to be as quick to action with my face buttons, but they do feel good. Like, that's feeling is not the issue here. It might just be my speed, my precision. Feels good. Feels good. And it's also very easy to go from left to right. So it's quite easy to change on a dime. That's actually a good thing of that D-pad. All right, let's move to the next game. Feels good as a whole. They feel very floaty, those triggers. I think that's actually one area where this controller would shine, is racing games. They feel very, very floaty. Great comfort, bit of tension, easy to like lock it in. Maybe not as easy as some controllers, but what you don't have in terms of locking your triggers, you do have in just the overall feel as a whole that is quite pleasant as a trigger, and also the shape. It's fairly elongated, like lifted. Before we jump to performance, I did want to show you guys. So right now we are on the Xbox controller mode, and if you hold select and start, you'll notice that it goes to a red little flicker here, and that is now the Switch Pro Controller mode. So this is a shortcut you can do to change your modes, and if we hold it again, it'll switch to a PS4 mode. So this, what I just did, you'll have if you're using either the dongle or if you're using wired. You can jump from these modes holding select and start. If you're using Bluetooth, it's going to depend on what face button that you push, and you won't have X input with Bluetooth. Instead, you're going to have PS mode, Switch Pro Controller mode, and your Android HID. And one last thing, specifically when you are on the Switch Pro Controller mode, one thing that was not present in the Nova Lite and is also not the case with the Nova 2 Lite. Right now, I'm on the gyro page, and you'll notice that nothing happens. That is because you do not have gyro with this controller like it was the case with the Nova Lite. So I wanted to make sure to address it, and this is why I also did not test gyro during the Aim Labs test. It's because the option just is not there with Nova 2 Lite. All right, let's move to performance and then conclusion. Here it is, guys, the Nova 2 Lite. I mean, golden standard for the budget category for sure. There is still some things I could wish were different, maybe things you will prefer, things that I would have wanted to not exactly be the way that they are. The D-pad is one of them for me, but as a whole, considering that this is $29.99, if you want something that'll take you far enough into competitive without breaking the bank, without breaking the budget, you can't really do much better than that. And I'm happy that they did release a Nova 2 Lite and added some extra features like the back paddle and hair triggers. It's so awesome to have that at this price point with GameSir's renowned stick calibration, because there's a lot of controllers on the market that will hit that price point now, a lot more than when the Nova Lite originally released, but a lot of them will sacrifice many things, whereas this controller also sacrifices some things, especially when looking at the other options that GameSir offer. You still have an extremely well balanced, especially for sticks and competitive style gaming, with the Nova 2 Lite. And you know, I guess that's why they worked with a competitive pro player, although I believe he's a fighting game pro player, so maybe he's got better than me with that D-pad. I mean, he's probably just better than me, point blank. Nothing else needs to be added to that. But yes, there it is, guys. The Nova 2 Lite, you can find it for $29.99 on Amazon or GameSir's own website. Easy to recommend, especially if you want like a second controller to put in the drawer if you have friends coming over or your nephew, stuff like that, or you're trying to have something light that comes with a case that you can put in your backpack. Or maybe if you've never owned a GameSir and you're thinking, why does everyone seem to like this company? Maybe that's a great entry point. Like, you'll see for yourself, not a whole lot of Hall effect sticks feels as good and as consistent as these are. But make no mistakes, if you go for their higher end option, oh, you're in for a treat. But it's such a great way to start with GameSir, and great sticks overall. Well executed, comes with the dongle, high pulling rate, great reliability overall. They did a phenomenal job. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Quick bonus, after you paired it once and you want to pair it again, you want to hold capture and the GameSir button, and you'll notice that the RGB here will flicker faster, which means it's now in pairing. Interesting, it does not seem to want to pair with the Switch 2. I did not expect that. It will not pair with the Switch 2, it will pair with the Switch 1. It'll also work for iPhone, Android, PC, and macOS. Peace!